Look natural. Hey, good morning, everybody. How we doing? All right, aloha. I'm pretty fired up. Man, for the last day, I thought you might be kind of sad that we're ending this morning, you know, but I'm in Hawaii. Well, welcome. Thanks for being here. You know, really a big thank you this morning. We had World Fuel funded the breakfast. Unbelievable. Chris, thanks so much. Unbelievable. And who says there's no such thing as a free breakfast? And it was fantastic over there. Thanks for doing that. And then our overall general session sponsor, Govini, thanks. Been unbelievable support, supporting everything from panels to all the events. So thank you so much. Can't do it without you. Well, I don't want to put pressure on our next speaker, but I got to say he's unbelievable. Every year has been one of the top keynotes, and he warmed us up a little bit on the panel. Did a great job on the panel, but I expect this is going to be just unbelievable. You're going to really enjoy this. Of course, I'm talking about Lieutenant General Simon Stuart, amazing leader, the Chief of the Australian Army. Lieutenant General Stuart enlisted as a soldier in 1987. And has more than 38 years of experience across a whole range of leadership, operations, training, and of course program management appointments in Australia and overseas. He commanded operations on 5 occasions at the company, joint task force, brigade, and force levels in East Timor, Afghanistan, and Egypt. Unbelievable experience. Oh, and Israel. I left that out. And then was the head of land capability in Army headquarters prior to coming to the chief job. He holds a master's degree in project management from the University of New South Wales, defense studies from King's College in London, and then a master's in strategy from our own U.S. Army War College. So please join me in welcoming an amazing leader, and again, I'm sure going to be a tremendous keynote, Lieutenant General Stuart.
Aloha. So thanks very much, General Brown. No pressure. Picture, if you will, a maritime region, one of peninsulas, islands, seas, one where trade flows through the straits of strategic terrain. The affairs of this region are shaped by 2 dominant nations, one a long-standing established power with a storied history of regional leadership. The other, a rising power, the result of trade, mercantilism, opportunity, and resolve. The rising power is building a great navy of a scale that appears to go well beyond just influencing its proximal seas and securing its prosperity. For some time, these 2 nations have prospered together. Indeed, they've often worked in league with each other and against common foe. But in recent years, tensions have grown. They talk less, and a deep suspicion has taken hold. Competition is now the norm, and conflict, it seems, is on the horizon. Indeed, it may be inevitable. The story may have a familiar echo, but it's not a contemporary one. It's instead a story of more than 2.5 millennia ago, set in the Peloponnese, where the great powers of the day, Sparta and Athens, spiraled into a conflict that would eventually destroy them both. One of the most relevant contentions to be drawn from the Peloponnesian Wars is what has today become known as the Thucydides trap. The idea that conflict is inevitable when a rising power challenges an established one. That it was, as Thucydides recalls, the rise of Athens and the fear this inspired in Sparta that made war inevitable. As an Australian, I reflect on a different story, one much less well known, but no less important. The story of the role that allies and partners, many of which what we might describe today as middle powers, played in creating the conditions for the Peloponnesian Wars. Athens and Sparta's respective allies were not helpless bystanders in this great power competition. Indeed, in many ways, they were quite the opposite. Key players who, in their own interest, stoked the friction and encouraged the war. The Megarians, a Spartan ally and whose city dominated regional trade routes, were furious when the Athenians levelled unilateral trade sanctions against them. They demanded a Spartan response, saying that the sanctions were an offence to all nations in the region. The Corinthians ventured even farther. Faced with what they saw as Athenian aggression, they sought to shame Sparta into war. They publicly lambasted the Spartans for their failure to contain Athens and their rise to power. And they threatened to find new allies if the Spartans were too weak. Spartan pride served as an accelerant in this response. So yes, the rise of Athens created the possibility of war, but one might reasonably conclude that allies and partners were the catalysts of its inevitability. They stoked fear in Sparta, questioned Spartan honour, and seemingly engaged the interests of both protagonists. Fear, honour, and interest, a familiar and compelling set of motivations to engage in the devastating contest that is war. A lesson to be drawn, perhaps, is that allies and partners have agency and influence, and with these come great responsibility. Now, given what is at stake, it's incumbent, on all nations and all institutions of national power to wield their agency and influence judiciously, transparently, and with a tragic sensibility. It's a real privilege to be here at LANPAC and to be here among friends. It's an honour to have been invited to deliver a keynote in such company. And I'd like to use the opportunity that's been afforded to me this morning to speak with you all directly and plainly. We are a powerful collective. The strategic land power network that we represent is quite remarkable when considered in its entirety. The armies and the marine forces that we are privileged to lead and steward collectively number in the region of 1.5 million regular soldiers, over 3.5 million including reservists. We collectively hold over 6,000 armoured fighting vehicles, over 10,000 artillery pieces, and several hundred attack helicopters, for example. That's interesting, but we are far more than just hard power. The friendships in this room are built on the sacrifice of those whom have gone before us and the rich histories of our nations and our region. Many of our relationships have been forged in the crucible of war, for good and for ill, and we are stronger for it today. Our collective will and cohesion is, in my estimation at least, more valuable than all of our hard power put together. The land power that we collectively generate is a force to be reckoned with. Its value proposition can be described by a set of 5 advantages that we individually and collectively share. These advantages derive from our common purpose. They drive unity of effort and they serve our collective interests. We can use these advantages to reduce the likelihood of conflict and of war, and surely that is the acme of deterrence. The first of our shared advantages is our sheer presence. Our soldiers and Marines are in every corner of our nations and our region. We are deeply connected with the societies we serve. The Army that I'm privileged to lead is one of the oldest and most respected national institutions in Australia. The story of the Australian Army is a part of the foundational story of our nation. We are garrisoned in some 157 locations across the breadth and depth of the Australian continent. We are intimately connected with the community we serve. And I know each of you have a similar story, because the history of armies tend to reflect in the history of nations. But increasingly, we are present in our region together. And I cannot recall a time in nearly 4 decades of service when we have trained and operated together at the frequency, the scale, the level of sophistication, and with such a sense of shared purpose as we do today. From Super Garuda Shield to Alon, Yamasakura, Chapel Gold, Wontok Warrior, to the 19 nations that will convene in Australia this coming July for Talisman Sabre, our collective presence demonstrates our collective will for a peaceful region. This matters. Our presence is supported by our second advantage, our ability to persist. It is impossible for even the most capable of militaries to maintain a continuous presence of platforms across the vast scale of the Indo-Pacific. Our armies, however, can offset these challenges by our ability to persist indefinitely, regardless of season, weather or terrain. Land forces are survivable, able to conceal in the diverse jungle and complex urban terrain that characterise our region. Now, some argue that persistence is being challenged by the changing character of war, and it is. But the proliferation of sensor technology, the experience of Russia's invasion of Ukraine are held up as evidence. But when we view the lessons of Ukraine through an Indo-Pacific lens, the effects of the environment create a very different set of challenges. Many of the nations represented here are in the top 10 countries for average rainfall per year, experiencing up to 4 metres of rain annually, for example. Mist and thick canopy are prevalent, and then of course there is the tyranny of distance. The use of massed technical systems to detect, recognise and identify concealed land forces is a very different proposition in our region. Concealment, dispersal and deception all remain viable counters for a disciplined, diligent and innovative force. The ability of land forces to persist and to survive in the face of attack is a common strength. But presence and persistence can go beyond physical and tactical benefits. Our most important choice is to be present together and to persist together. The presence of allies together in key strategic terrain diminishes the impact of coercion and aggression against them. It increases the risk associated with any choice by an adversary to use hard power, applied as it must then be against the many, against the collective. Collective capability, habitually employed side by side, is a remarkably powerful expression of collective will. We can do more to enhance our presence and our persistence tangibly in the immediate term. The simplest approach is for better interoperability between our people, our technology, our doctrine, tactics, techniques and procedures. But there is an opportunity to be more strategic in our approach. Ad hoc relationships are good, but the more we do to formalise our agreements and arrangements and to normalise our collective presence, the more credible it becomes. Enhancing our presence, our capacity to persist together is, in my assessment at least, central to any collective theory of success and is vital in deterring conflict. Our third advantage is asymmetry, our ability to apply our strengths against the weaknesses of adversaries, ideally in ways that delay and disrupt their will and their capacity to respond. I view this particularly through a defensive lens. History tells us time and time again that even small, well-prepared ground formations in well-fortified defensive positions, layered and sensibly arrayed, can generate asymmetry against much larger and more capable forces. The anti-access, area denial, and very long-range fires that predominate in parts of our region are optimised for ships, for planes and for infrastructure. Land forces in the defence dispersed are harder to identify and to target, hiding among the clutter of the land and the EMS and employing multi-domain deception. We're able to disperse and to deceive, to create dilemmas for adversaries who must choose how to set their targeting thresholds and where to expend their magazine. Distributed land forces can in this way blur the kill web, making it harder for an adversary to apply decisive action. Now, asymmetry is an inherent strength we all share. The question for us is, however, how do we best combine our efforts in support of our common interests? Perhaps we need a concept like distributed asymmetry to ensure that collectively we are more than the sum of our individual contributions. Now, asymmetry is most effective when it's applied at the right place and at the right time. And if we tilt the map, and the geography of our region literally ties us together. The land bridge connects New Zealand to Japan. The history of our region tells us exactly where the strategic terrain is. We can ill afford to overlap one another's asymmetric strengths. It makes a lot more sense for us to offset each other's vulnerabilities. And there is, I believe, an opportunity for us to consider this in further detail in our staff talks, in our planning, and our operations, activities, and investments. If we can position our asymmetry in the right place at the right time, then we can make the most advantage of our fourth advantage, our versatility. Now, I contend that land forces are the most versatile of military forces. Practically any well-led and trained army formation can fulfil practically any task, ranging from domestic HADR to combat operations. And it is in this regard that I most often look to our teammates in the United States Marine Corps as an example. They've spent their entire history nurturing a culture of versatility and adaptability that is instructive. Versatility is all the more important in the face of the tyranny of distance. As I stand here today, I'm nearly 8,500 kilometres, or about 5,200 miles from home. That's about 12 hours by air and a 13-day sail at economical speed. The versatility of land forces in the Indo-Pacific is critical to overcoming this tyranny of distance. Now, I need the Australian Army to be able to transition in stride from training and rehearsing for battle to disaster relief should the need arise. And I certainly need them to be able to go the other way as well. When viewed through a collective lens, our capability and capacity to adapt and to successfully meet the challenges of today and tomorrow are evident and are indeed continually evolving. For evidence of this, look no further than what our soldiers learn from one another as they operate together at home and abroad every day. So finally, what do we generate from the relative advantages of land power? Presence, persistence, asymmetry, versatility, and this combination, in my estimation, delivers exceptional value. Now, some of this is about value for money, and that really matters today. But I advocate that armies offer significant return on investment, particularly given the prominence of land power in the history of defending nations and ending wars. But the collective value of land power is perhaps best viewed through a broader lens, starting with the relationships that exist in this room. These are strong. Some are new, but most are the product of a long-term investment. Our army-to-army relationships, our army-to-marine relationships are enduring, they are resilient, and they are dexterous. They have tangible but often overlooked value that goes well beyond a defence dollar. They allow us to look past the news of the day and to engage on a foundation of personal and institutional trust. There is true value in the enduring strategic land power network. So in bringing this to a close, let's return to 432 BC and to Athens and Sparta. Even though a tragic sensibility demands that we seriously consider the worst and apply the lens of a professional pessimist, I do not believe that any war is inevitable. The Peloponnesian Wars were in large part a failure of transparency, of strategic empathy, and of communication. Fear, honour, and interest, Thucydides' diagnosis of the three elements of the human condition that drive behaviour of states in international relations, continue. The obvious question is, could the Athenians and the Spartans have found a way to reduce their fear of each other, to respect each other's honour, and to have found common interest? Perhaps the question worthy of our consideration today is, how could the likes of the Megarians and the Corinthians have eased tensions instead of stoking them? One of the other popular theories that emerges from Thucydides' witness of the Peloponnesian Wars is the Melian dilemma. The idea that the strong do what they can and the weak will suffer what they must. Some argue that this is a reality of the world and of our times, and they are right to assess that the spectre of great power competition dictates the organising principles and that the inherent tension is real. But I contend that, like most simplifications, the Melian dilemma implies determinism and obscures agency and the potential of collective resolve. The real story that Thucydides tells is that allies and partners have agency, the capacity to ease tensions at least as much as to exacerbate them, accompanied, of course, by the weight of great responsibility. So I'm very grateful for the opportunity to be part of this exceptional team of leaders across our region and beyond. And when I consider our common purpose, we are truly one team. In closing, I'd like to extend my sincere thanks to General Clark and all of the team at United States Army Pacific, and a special thanks to General Brown and all of the AUSA team for bringing us together at another superb Land Forces of the Pacific. Now, this year marks the 250th birthdays of both the United States Army and the United States Marine Corps, and I want to wish you all a very happy birthday in advance. We in the Australian Army are very proud of over 100 years of friendship and mateship. And we look forward to serving alongside you in the course of the next 100 years. Thank you very much.
Morning, sir. Major Young Ju. I'm a fellow AUSA. So it's a two-part question for you. So the first part of the question is, what are some of the less known capabilities or niche strengths that the Australian Army can contribute to the regional conditions? And then the second part is, how can like-minded partners better leverage those capabilities in joint planning? Thank you.
Thanks for the question. I think we all suffer from the illusion that we're somehow unique or special. I don't think that's the case, whether that's historically or... we each bring something to the fight. And I'm very, very proud to lead an army that has a pretty pragmatic outlook that is able to leverage our key strength, and that is our people. As we heard from the phenomenal senior leader panel yesterday, our strength is in our soldiers, our real strength is in our NCO Corps. And it's our investment in the training, education, experience, leader development of our NCO Corps, and through that, our investment in our soldiers, that I think sets us apart. That's not unique with anyone else in the room, but it's something we take a great deal of time and attention to do. Armies are human organisations. Technology matters. We are not Luddites by any stretch of the imagination, but our job as military professionals, and in particular as land force professionals, is to sensibly make judgments about the balance between war's enduring human nature and its ever-changing character. That ever-changing character is dominated by technological change of a scope, a pace and a tempo that we've not seen before. That's perhaps one aspect of our generation that is unique from those who may have gone before. And the soldiers, the NCOs and the young officers that are joining our army and serving our army today are the ones that are going to operate, lead and command our army, our armies, in the challenges tomorrow and the day after. And that's why it's so important that we have that balance as part of our PME, our training, education and experience, and that we invest in all three dimensions of an army, as a profession, as a national institution and as a fighting force. Thanks for your question.
Hey, Simon, again, thanks. Masterful as always, and appreciate the 250th birthday shout out to the Army and the Marines. Bob Brown said he doesn't feel that old yet, so we're working on that. A couple quotable quotes. You've highlighted a few things, persistence, presence, symmetry, in your remarks. And I highlight yesterday, Admiral Paparo mentioned something telling. He said, deterrence remains our highest duty. So across the Pacific, across the land forces that we have, and you've reinforced several times, all of the exercises that we have grown together as partners, allies, and we will continue to do that. From your perspective, the question then is, if deterrence remains our highest duty, how do you see, as we look to the longer term future, to reinforce that deterrence as part of our partnership going forward? Thanks.
Hey, thanks for the question, Mick. Much appreciated. I've got to offer two points in response. Deterrence, in my view, at least, is a day-by-day proposition. Deterrence is ultimately a combination of art and science, because if you look at who we're trying to deter, its outcome whether we're successful or whether we fail in our highest duty is determined in the mind of its objective. And we shouldn't underestimate the Shakespearean nature of the human condition and the power that is vested in world leaders. Deterrence relies on the deterrent being relevant and credible. And of course, relevance and credibility are relative to the operating environment, the pacing threat. Our military contribution to all of the elements of national power and the prosecution of statecraft by our elected representatives needs to be relevant and credible. There needs to be a match, a coherence, a lack of a say-do gap between collective will and collective capability. And our job is to give expression in the military element of national power to collective will. I think collectively we do that very, very well. And what were previously a series of largely bilateral and in some cases minilateral exercises are now a campaign that constitutes operations, activities and investments with purpose. They are developing our capabilities at the rapid rate every single day. We have persistence, we have presence, we are absolutely developing a symmetry at the right place and at the right time. That trajectory continues. Would we like it to be faster? Absolutely. But I think we're going at a really, really impressive rate. And what I've personally been part of and witnessed over just the last 3 years is nothing short of remarkable. And I've not seen anything like it in my service. I hope that answers your question.
Sir, thank you so much for being here. Please give General Stuart a big round of applause. Thank you.
Thanks again, General Stuart, for a great presentation. Next, we will hear from Brigadier General Catherine A. Trombley, Commanding General 9th Mission Support Command, United States Army Reserve, who will moderate the panel discussion on combat-ready reserves, enabling success in the Indo-Pacific. As they come and take their seats at the stage, Brigadier General Trombley earned a commission in the Quartermaster Corps through the University of Washington ROTC program in June 1996. Her first duty station was Baumholder, Germany, with the 47th Force Support Battalion, 1st Armored Division. She has served in both active and reserve units, including a deployment to Afghanistan in support of Operation Enduring Freedom. She holds a Master's of Science from the United States Army War College and a BA in Communication from Seattle Pacific University. General Trombley, the floor is yours, ma'am.
Thank you, General Smith, General Brown, AUSA. And of course, we can't start without a aloha. Aloha. Okay, we'll work on it. Good morning, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. It is a true privilege to moderate today's panel on building and employing combat-ready Army Reserve forces. I'd like to start off by introducing our distinguished panel members. Our first panelist is Major General Ramon Zagala. General Zagala serves as the 27th Commander of the Reserve Command Philippine Army. He previously served as the Commander of the Presidential Security Group and the Armed Forces of the Philippine Civil Relations Service. His family has a long history of military service, leading up to his father, Major General Rafael Zagala, who served as the 25th Commanding General of the Philippine Army. Our second panelist is Major General Gavin Gardner. General Gardner currently serves as the commander of the 8th Theater Sustainment Command. A career logistician, he previously served as the Indo-PACOM J4 and as the commanding general for the Joint Munitions Command at Rock Island Arsenal. Our third panelist is Major General Scott Winter. General Winter currently serves as the Deputy Commanding General, Strategy and Plans for the United States Army Pacific Command. He previously served as the commander of the 1st Australian Division and as the Chief of Defense Force Liaison Officer to the Chairman of the Joint Chief of Staff, Pentagon. And as a special note, General Winter began his military career in the Australian Army Reserve. Our final panelist and host for this morning is Major General Joseph Listorti. General Listorti currently serves on the Office of the Chief of the Army Reserve, Deputy Chief of Staff 357. He previously served as the J3 for U.S. Northern Command, the J33 Joint Staff, and the Commanding General of the 78th Training Division. General Listorti also served in several key staff positions in Joint Special Operations Command. Sir, thank you for hosting today's panel. Over to you for opening comments.
Good morning, Catherine. Good morning, AUSA. General Brown, the Association of the United States Army, and our partners across the Pacific, thank you for this opportunity to represent General Harder here and pursue his vision for our support to the Indo-Pacific. It's great to see some old friends, General Womack and General McFarland. We were all lieutenants together, and it's really great to see you guys. As we gather here at LANPAC, one thing is clear: the Indo-Pacific is the decisive theater. The security architecture here rests on integrated deterrence, built through joint readiness, allied interoperability, and forward presence. Pre-positioned equipment placed at the right time in the right place magnifies that strength. More than cutting response time, forward-basing Army-specific equipment in this region is a symbol of deterrence. Our Army maintains a critical role in deterrence with relationships with other armies, allies, and partners, and ensuring continued access to key terrain. Whether it's enabling combat employment, responding to crisis, or deterrence, we must think beyond rotational presence and invest in persistent forward posture that matches the pace and scale of regional threats here in the region in support of USRPAC. Thank you again.
Sir, thank you for your comments. Army Reserve Forces are an essential capability for the future fight. Today we will explore how Army Reserve Forces enable the total Army and the combined joint force in the Indo-Pacific. General Winter, if we would start off with the first question, what is the strategic value of Army Reserve Forces in today's Indo-Pacific security environment?
Thank you, Catherine, and thank you for the opportunity to be up here on this stage for such a timely opportunity to talk about the importance of reserve forces. And I say timely because we need to harness the entire surface area of all of our militaries out here in the Indo-Pacific. We had that fantastic presentation yesterday from General Galido talking about how smaller armies and smaller powers manage to bring asymmetry to the region. And in order to do that, certainly small armies like the Australian Army comprises its mass of all service categories, full-time, part-time, and those in the standby reserve who we might need to call on in a time of need. The Australian Army, just by way of explanation, has two divisions. There's the 1st Australian Division, optimised for deployments overseas, and the 2nd Australian Division, which is the Army Reserve. My good friend who commanded the 2nd Australian Division would always remind me that the 1st Division was going nowhere if the 2nd Division wasn't enabled to get it out the gate. So we need to harness the entire surface area. Regular, reserve, National Guard in the case of the United States, and find innovative new ways to make sure that we can bring everyone into the fight. And General Astorti started to talk about some of the adaptations that the US Army Reserve is starting to make. I think all of our reserves are showing that same agility.
Thank you, sir. General Zakalik, over to you.
Well, the Philippine Army values its reserve really during the establishment of the Republic. The National Defense Act in 1935 established reserve forces as part of the citizen forces. And as proven in World War II, about 80,000 fought in the defense of the Philippines. And I could honestly say there were about 12 divisions. Of the 12 divisions, 10 were from reserve forces. It sees the value of manpower can bring from its citizen soldiers. So it's very vital that there is a synergy between regular and reserve forces. We now fast forward to modern times. Sadly, the Philippines, we've been embroiled in an almost 50-year insurgency. Thus, we focused more on how to solve insurgency and put premium more on regular forces fighting insurgents. Therefore, we had put the reserve forces, which are part of our citizen, in the back burner. We didn't want to use them for insurgency because they are part of the economy moving forward because they had regular jobs. We instead focused on regular forces. We know that the value of reserve forces in the Indo-Pacific is very important. And we see it, like what General Galido said yesterday, asymmetrical warfare. The role of a small army and small economy is very important. And we are trying to catch up with our reserve forces. And I was given that task, that very delicate task, to ensure that they're ready to fight. And I assure you, they will, and they will have the will to fight.
Thank you, sir. General Astorti.
Thanks, Catherine, for the question. When I put my uniform on, it says United States Army. We're one Army. This idea of, I could talk to you about some percentages of the Army Reserve Forces that support Compo 1, but that would be academic. The real winning of an Army is a total Army force. And we have to change our paradigm into that concept, that our jersey and jersey number is what it is on the team, and we're a total Army. When I served in Joint Special Operations Command, no one cared that I was a reservist. They cared that I showed up and I could do my job and get it done well. The idea of the Army Reserves is a noble one, but we must view ourselves as a total Army in order to fight in this theater. And so I would just share that as my offering to that discussion.
Gentlemen, thank you for your valuable perspectives. Army Reserve Forces provide critical capabilities throughout all phases of conflict. General Gardner, if you would please take this next question. How do reserve forces contribute to setting the theater and maintaining operational reach in support of integrated deterrence?
Hey, thanks, Catherine. So I will tell you, as one of the U.S. Army Pacific's enabling commands, my formation of both logisticians and engineers, the preponderance of the formations come from the total Army, Compos 1, 2, and 3. And there will be nothing that we will achieve as far as setting this theater without the total Army. I'm also surrounded by some great teammates as other theater enabling commands, the 311th Signal Command, the 312th Engineer Command, the 200th MP Command, the 18th Medical Command that may have an active duty leader, but almost all of its forces come from the reserve for us in order to set this theater, but more importantly, after we've set it, allows it to have prolonged endurance and operational reach. That's only done from a total Army, just as General Astorti just kind of highlighted.
Thank you, sir. General Astorti.
Well, I think some of the unique capabilities in the total Army, if we pre-position them forward, as in my opening remarks, we enable and support USERPAC through 8th TSC and through you, Catherine, and the 9th TSC to have that additional deterrence. Some of those unique capabilities that only sit in certain parts of the Army but are part of the total Army forward deployed would be much easier for us to access during a time of conflict. Our adversary's strategy is to contest us and to frustrate us in the homeland. The best idea when someone throws a punch at you is not to be there. So moving the equipment forward meets that strategy, end state against our adversaries and takes that away from them just a little bit. And I think that's what we're focused out here in the Indo-Pacific to do and to support 8th TSC and ultimately USERPAC itself. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. As we all know, it can be challenging for part-time soldiers to maintain combat readiness. General Zagala, if we could start with you, how do you build combat-ready reserve forces in your Army?
In the Philippine Army, we have a Reserve Command, which is under me. It's a regular unit. And it's composed of 17 regional brigade-size regular cadre and about 89 community defense centers stretched all over the 89 provinces of the Philippines. So we organize them by province, by battalion, and by region into like brigades. We have approximately 25 reserve brigades and 89 infantry ready reserve battalions. Plus, we have a list of standby reserve. The standby reserve are graduates of ROTC and those who take BCMT. And they remain a list and we can get them when we need them. So that's how we organize. And they have a basic training for our soldiers will be the basic citizens military training for the enlisted, and of course the officers will be the ROTC. From there, they can have regular career courses that is patterned and inclusive of that of the regular Army. Aside from that, these CDCs and these regional community defense group composed of regular troops, we have sustainment training every year. And they train side by side with regular infantry battalions, which I said earlier has been full of a combat experience from the insurgency. So mentorship between a regular unit and a reserve battalion is done regularly. And we often do the training, the sustainment training at company levels in regular units training institutions, so that there is a feeling of inclusion, not exclusion, of reserve forces. Like I said earlier, we're doing a catch-up on including reserve forces as part of the total force, to include them in the campaign, just in case in our Constitution dictates of war, invasion, rebellion, or any conflict.
Thank you, sir. General Listorti.
Well, I think we focus on training through collective training and being forward with our theater armies in support of their exercises. And that's something we're working on in the Army Reserve to be better at and produce units that are capable when they get here and that are trusted. There has to be trust between the commands that we're going to produce the right force, the right capability for the leader that needs it. And so we're continuing to focus on that key theme of trust through exercising and building partnerships, not just with other armies, but internally in our own Army. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. General Winter.
Hey, thanks, Catherine. You kindly pointed out that I started as a rifleman in the Army Reserve 30-odd years ago. My son is now a rifleman in the Army Reserve today. He's much more ready than I was back then. And I think a large component of that is there isn't a single natural disaster or event in Australia that the Army Reserve does not respond to. Because readiness is a mindset. And they are the first out the door every time. So they're building teams, they're building a deployment mindset, they're going to the point of need. And as General Listorti said, we're also adapting the individual and collective training to be realistic and to be targeted at the purpose and not trying to do everything. So like I said, I'm just thoroughly impressed by the degree of readiness that we've managed to achieve by giving that sense of purpose to our 2nd Division.
Thank you, gentlemen. I think we've all experienced challenges in manning our formation, regardless of the compos. General Winter, if we could start with you, how does the Army Reserve recruit and train its citizen soldiers?
Well, as everyone's mentioned, the One Army, I think we've all got challenges in recruiting, and the Army Reserve just as much so. But I think, again, if I sort of leverage off my previous response, giving our young people a sense of purpose. So they're joining, they're part of an organisation they feel good being part of, that they're joining a national institution, as General Stuart, that they're proud of being a part of, but when they join, they get that sense of purpose. They know what they're going to be contributing to that national defence. They know they're going to have those opportunities to travel and see the world. So we need to show that value proposition, but I think giving our young people that sense of purpose, that they want to serve. And we just need to give them the opportunity. What I would say, I've been impressed seeing what the US Army has done, and what Australia is doing as well, is adapting our recruitment processes to make it easier to join. And we should be opting people in as opposed to screening people out, because there's so many young people that want this opportunity, and we owe it to them.
Sir, thank you, sir. General Zagala?
Well, like I said, we are deployed in the provinces, so in order for us to recruit and retain, we rely on the community itself. And the Philippines being in an area most vulnerable with lots of typhoons and earthquake, we made it a point that our citizens will have a collective responsibility for defending the nation, not only in traditional but non-traditional roles such as HADR. And that's one way to motivate them to help and volunteer. Like General Winter said, that the first one to help in disasters are mostly soldiers, those embedded in the community. And in our case, it doesn't differ. And we rely on both regular and reserve forces in helping the community. So it's a great motivation for young people and older people who we want to recruit to help the community. So it's a community-based action that we are looking for in recruiting and retaining. Of course, we also look in history. We all know that in the past, when we were invaded, at that time we were still a Commonwealth of the United States. When we were invaded by Japan, like I said earlier, of 10 reserve divisions that were mobilized, they were reserve, and they were part of the community. So that sense of idealism to protect the country, to defend the country, is what we also are looking for in today's youth. Because like 80 years ago, it has come full circle. We are again threatened. And that our powerful neighbor is threatening us. So with that is enough motivation for a lot of the members of our youth and our people to find the idealistic, patriotic duty to serve their country, even in just the reserve. Not the regular, but the reserve.
Sir, thank you. While the nature of war remains consistent, its character is ever changing. General Listorti, if you could please start us off with the next question. How is the Army Reserve transforming to meet the demands for the future fight?
We're in the process of conducting course of action analysis right now for Army Transformation Initiative. And to avoid getting ahead of my boss or anybody else in the Army, we're developing, per the XORD, courses of action that will lead us into transformation for the future. Some of it is out in the press, but there's been really no decisions made, and we're going to give our senior leaders that decision space. So we'll continue to develop courses of action, transform in accordance with what the Army wants us to be and not what we think we should be. Thank you.
General Zagala?
It's different now, before you just have a piece of weapon and you can fight. Now there's cyber, there is the social media. You know, Filipinos are very fond of social media. We're on top of it. And really, the battle goes on every day. Believe it or not, the battle is in comments, in likes, in discussions in social media. So this is a domain of, as they call it, information domain. And the battle goes on right now. And we need to adapt to that. Previously, I was a commander of the Civil Relations Service, and that would be your information advantage, I believe. And I saw how the battle of perception is as important as the kinetic battle itself. It shapes everyone's minds and polarizes. Which side are you on? Having said that, we have to go follow the trend of where the young people are. And the young people are into this. So in the Philippine Army, we're trying to develop more cyber, network-centric approach to recruit reserve. In fact, we had this cyber exercise. Pardon me, I'm not really a cyber person. I just know of it, and I'm not an expert in it, but I will try my best to explain to you what cyber is about. So we did the ROTC cyber exercise, wherein we invited ROTC for a competition. Don't ask what they did. So they competed with each other. And you know, when you have a competition, you bring the best out of people. Of course, you give a little trophy and recognition. They strive more. So we saw that this is the interest of the young people, cyber. So our innovation probably in training would be that. We're getting into more cyber. We're also getting into affiliate reserve, because there is some capabilities in the Philippine Army that we cannot do. And sadly, cyber is one of them. So we look at IT companies and make them affiliate reserves. Again, we rely on their patriotism, that they join the affiliate reserve in their own field of expertise that they can bring to the Philippine Army, which we do not have, or we lack. So that's one way of doing it. Looking at the young people, what they do, adapting, making changes, and from there we move forward with the young people. I also got into drones, drone racing, because I know that I learned that from Australia. So I studied in Australia, and I took my staff course there. They're into drone racing. You know, kids nowadays, they like anything fast-paced. So that's one way we do to innovate and improve our training. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. General Winner.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say that the Australian Army Reserve is transforming as part of the total Army. But a big part of that for me has been that we have been better at recognising the unique strengths that the Army Reserve brings. We talk about Army in the community, and often it's actually the Army Reserve which is in the community, of the community, and better linked into a lot of those other aspects of our national institutions. And in recent years, we've been leveraging that more as we look at the priority of homeland defence and the strengths that our Army Reserve can bring in bringing together the interagency for national resilience. And that's something that I think the 2nd Australian Division has been really leading the nation in bringing that interagency together. Is that transformative? I think that's more us recognising the great strengths that come from the Army Reserve, the connections to community and to that interagency to ensure that we do leverage the entirety of the surface area of our Army. And again, when we talk about setting the theatre, recognising the importance of securing bases in Northern Australia, air bases and other critical infrastructure, the Army Reserve knows its purpose and is actively rehearsing those sort of missions. So it's a really exciting time, I think, to be a reservist.
Sir. Thank you, sir. General Clark previously spoke about the importance of the strategic land power network. General Gardner, before we transition to questions from the audience, I'd like to ask, what lessons learned can help us increase interoperability, improve coalition training, and integrate reserves more effectively into the future combined joint operations?
Hey, thanks, Catherine. And so we talked about some innovation and some changes up here. So we ask our reserves to be globally available, but I want them to be regionally aligned. And so this was a concept that USERPAC really brought a year and a half ago to the Army Reserve and said, we don't want to just keep rotating different units through this theater, because the people, which is the most important thing, will not develop the partnerships with our allies and partners and regions if you keep changing the faces. You're not going to build the readiness that we want to do collectively. And so we've changed that process to look at routinely bringing back the same formations, the same people, to create synergy from an understanding of what we want them to do in the time of crisis, but more importantly, develop the relationships with allies and partners forward. So routinely now, whether it's in Australia, in Papua New Guinea, in Timor-Leste, in the Philippines, the reserve formations that the 8th TSC brings back are the same units year after year after year. And as General Lasori just talked about, one of the hardest things of doing is bringing the equipment every year into theater and out of theater. Some of the countries that we participate in, and I love Australia, but my God, I hate bringing equipment to Australia.
It's no easier for us, by the way.
I know. But if we now pre-position that equipment in Australia, forward in the Philippines, forward in Japan, now we're just bringing the people to theater. That's changing the way we're doing business. That is going to be the way we develop the partnerships that get us after how are we going to build out really the resiliency, more importantly, the relationships that allow us to eventually prevail. That started a year ago. It continues this year. You'll see it in Talisman Sabre. You've seen it in the Philippines. You will see it this past year in Papua New Guinea, Timor-Leste, where 9th MSC-led reserve formations come back routinely to the same place, meet the same partner, and really, you don't regress, you progress moving forward. That's what we're doing now, and that has been a transformative change led from General Harder, who has really allowed us to do that with Forces Command back to the United States.
Thank you, sir. General Winner.
Now, just makes me think of another dimension to this in terms of what our Army Reserve leaders bring to that land power network. And one of the really important things, I think, is our reservists tend to think more about mobilisation than the rest of us. And this is a time where we need to get serious about the idea of mobilisation. And I think the leadership in our Army Reserves, that they think about it, they practice it, they see some of the realities of it, and I think they can help us all to actually look at what our collective mobilisation plans might be in the event of crisis and conflict.
General Zagala.
I think what we need more is involvement of our reserve in combined joint training. In 2024 and 2025, we were able to train about 1,200 per year Philippine Army Reserve Forces joining our allies in training. I think the value there really is the closeness to be able to interact with our allies and see shared values. And most important is to see friends. Because right now, we feel in the Philippines that facing a very powerful adversary, we need powerful friends who will come to our aid and help us. And during exercises, that's a big demonstration already, not only for our populace, but to our adversaries. So for us to sharpen the skills of our reservists, more participation in allied trainings, combined and joint trainings is essential.
Thank you, gentlemen. With the time remaining, we'll now transition to a couple of questions from the audience. General Gardner, sir, the first one is for you. The comment is, reinforce the collective total Army capabilities, but from your position as the 8th TSC CG, what do you see as the theater sustainment gaps, and how can industry partners help assist?
Yeah, it's always a simple question, right? So, look, first and foremost, that enduring relationship we have with our reserve partners, number one. Whether this theater, depending on what we're doing, could have up to 5 expeditionary sustainment commands. 3 of those come from Compo 2 or 3. I have those relationships with those commands today. They participate in our battle rhythm events. We go see them. We give theater updates. Again, creating that collective knowledge is important. But as we look to expand, as General Lasordi just talked about, and you're pre-positioning more things forward to really speed, or as General Winter just talked about, be faster at mobilization. This is where you leverage commercial industry, host nation industries. How do you speed up the customs process? How can we leverage host nation skilled labor to maintain equipment, pre-position stocks, put into place the contracts that allow us to rapidly mobilize, do the joint reception, onward integration of equipment and people? That's the next step of what we have to leverage. That's going to be done bilaterally, whether we're in the Philippines with General Zagala and his team. Obviously in Australia, we practice this every other year during Talisman Sabre. This will be another year where we do a combined joint theater sustainment command that'll be led by a reserve ESC that'll practice doing exactly that. Reception, staging, onward integration, sustainment across the continent of Australia, and then the redeployment of formations, both joint and combined. That's powerful. That's how you change the calculus. That's how we move forward.
Thank you, sir. And thank you for the question. General Lasordi, what barriers are there to forward positioning Army Reserve equipment in the Indo-Pacific? And how can the Office of the Chief of the Army Reserve help clear those barriers?
Well, in support of USERPAC, I wouldn't call them obstacles, right? We can work through anything. We're the American Army. What we need to do is prioritize where it's going to go and what equipment you need at what time and phase it in support of the 8th TSC. You know, I used the example of the watercraft we gave up many years ago, but we have all these mariners now, and guess where we need watercraft? So you could contract watercraft, but if your adversary is sinking those watercraft, I don't think you're going to get commercial people to move equipment. You're going to need what we gave up a few years ago. So we're looking at reinstilling some of that capability. We have mariners. We're going to work with 8th TSC and General Gardner's team to make sure that we're ready to go and we're forward positioning not just the equipment, but the humans that he may need to support his operations here in theater and in support of USERPAC and General Clark's objectives and end states here in the theater.
Thank you, sir. General Winter, in what ways is the reserve forces in Australia and America different? And what do you think the U.S. Army Reserve could learn from Australia?
I think it's always good to have the opportunity to learn from an Australian. It's the beauty of being an embedded officer in US headquarters. Look, I see more similarities than differences. You know, clearly, in terms of the part-time aspect of the total Army, in the US Army, you have both the National Guard and the Army Reserve. And I guess the Australian Army Reserve is a blend of those two. It is regionally based, it is in the community, but at the same time it does respond to the federal authorities. So a lot of similarities. In terms of what can be learned, look, opportunities for exchanges between the two just mean they're going to have the opportunity to learn from each other. And I was really encouraged to see our DCG for Homeland Affairs out in Australia recently. He caught up with Commander of the 2nd Division, extremely rich dialogue. They were discussing mobilisation. They were discussing the like challenges in terms of training. So I think, talk about land power network, I think we need to link up our reserve forces and let them exchange best practices. But the beauty of Army Reservists is they're a volunteer every time they show up. Right? And it's a real strength that they bring and energy that they bring to the fight. So you talk about diversity. having people who are civilian soldiers and full-time all adds to the mix.
Thank you, sir. General Zagala, and I know in this forum we've talked primarily about Army Reserve, but you have a state partnership program with the National Guard. If you could give your perspective on how that program is going with in the Indo-PACOM AOR.
Last week, we had a SME, subject matter exchange, over at my command in the Reserve Command from, I believe, the Guam National Guard. They came over for personal management. So this is more international defense cooperation. It's more, for me, of course we will learn from, for that subject of the Guam National Guard, it's more on personal readiness, personal management. But it's more on connecting, more on people to people. So when we have such partnerships, it's building bridges for us. It's us being able to connect and establish a network among like-minded citizens of the Philippines and that of the PACOM, and in this case, the Guam National Guard. So we see value in that.
Thank you, sir. So this question is for anybody on the panel. General Zagala, you kind of mentioned a little bit about the latest technology with drone racing, but in light of the rapid expansion and impact of advanced technologies on our Army missions and associated concepts, needs for cyber expertise, application of AI, use of unmanned systems, do you think that we should expand the roles of our reserve forces to focus on leveraging the skills that they may already bring to this asymmetric, tech-centric capability?
The Philippine Army, we've been in combat for the past 50 years. A lot of our soldiers just really know how to move, shoot, and communicate. Logistics, to intelligence, to find the enemy, to fight. But other aspects such as cyber, other technological advancement, we're still adapting to that. The best way to get such technology and to adapt quickly, or from people who are already doing it, who are attuned to it and are already practicing it, such as the young people. So I believe that, the reserve forces can put this forward immediately, because we can recruit from reservists who do cyber, who do IT, and they can put forward already and join. Actually, it's the other way around. They now will be integrating into regular forces and teaching them. So in an army like the Philippines, that we want to advance technologically and transitioning from ISO to TDO, it's very important for us to adapt. And for us to adapt, it's very hard to teach soldiers who only know how to fight new things such as IT. So we need the help of reservists to do this.
Thank you, sir. And if you wouldn't mind the next question as well. Stemming from your perspective on the next generation, how are you maximizing the multi-generational composition of reserve forces, and are you looking for unique trends, talents that you're specifically trying to incorporate into the Army Reserve?
Our law states that our Republic Act 7077, which is the Reservist Act, states that there's the Ready Reserve and there's the Standby Reserve. The Ready Reserve is supposed to be composed of Category 1, which is the ages of 18 to 35. And that's the hardest to recruit. And Category 2, which is the ages of 36 to 51. Some of them are still around and into the reserve because some of them are already retired or are much older. So there's a mix of recruitment and retention of reserve. It's truly a challenge to put these two generations together. How do we call them? Gen X and millennials. And
Yeah, I don't know the
I
word
myself,
that-
I'm Gen X, and I think it's
MX.
the greatest generation.
100%.
So the challenge really is, putting together all these generations together and work with each other, and having a reserve unit with these two categories, making them one, is really, I cannot say it's already there, but truly a challenge to put together.
Thank you, sir. General Gardner, sir, this question maybe is for you, and if General Listorti wants to join in on this, but when we look at the changes in Army force structure and the reductions that may come to the Compo 1 formation, do you see it beneficial to have more multi-compo formations, or just the way that we are now with the Compo 3 formations plugging in, and just your thoughts on that, sir?
Well, so first, I don't want to get ahead of Army senior leaders, but I do know that General Harder has endorsed a multi-compo sustainment brigade, not necessarily in this theater, but as a proof of principle of how can you take in this case, a reserve formation that, as just General Zagala highlighted, will have some unbelievable talent in it from people in their commercial jobs, their day jobs, but then it translates to an unbelievable, powerful sustainment formation when they go to operate and train. And so I'm a firm believer, because quite frankly the 8th TSC is already multi-compo. Every exercise we do has multi-compo formations in it. Every exercise we do, we strive to get joint formations in it as well, with the other land components, in particular the Marines, but also our Air Force brethren, whether it's our Air Force engineers, Red Horse, Navy Seabees, etc., as an instance. But most importantly, and I think it's already been demonstrated as you listen throughout this week, if you truly want to leverage the land power, it's got to be multinational. And so from an Army logistician's perspective, it means no difference to me whether I'm dealing with a reservist logistician or an active logistician. It's all about the technical ability. It's about rehearsing together so that we get better at what we're supposed to do on the terrain that we want to do it, so that we get positional advantage. That's what we're striving to do. So if it's a multi-compo formation for the U.S. Army, awesome. I'd rather it be a joint multinational compo unit, even better.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your questions today. While we didn't get to all of them, the panel members will be around afterwards to facilitate further questions. At this point, I'd like to provide our panelists an opportunity for closing remarks as we wind down the discussion. General Zagala, if we could start with you.
I would like to thank AUSA for inviting me here. Truly an honor for a commander of the Reserve Command of the Army to address a very esteemed audience, and the opportunity to reach out to our allies, that the Philippines is your ally also. To close, I'd like to say what I always say to reservists when I see them. I ask for them to be ready, always be ready, to be resilient, and have endurance. Ready to fight, move, shoot, communicate, for them to do what we ask them to do. Resilient because we're not complete. We're not like our allies, complete with equipment, complete with technological advancement. So you need to be resilient. And endurance, to be able to take the fight longer. I liken this to World War II because that's exactly what happened. My father is a World War II veteran, and they were resilient. They had little equipment when they went to Bataan. So they were ready, but very little equipment. Endurance, they transformed into guerrilla forces. So having said that, I ask also the regular forces that manage reserve that I want you to have good governance. Make sure the training and the management of these reserve forces are well done. Also have integrity. I don't want any reservists to see any blotch in your character or see anything bad in you. And of course, be a role model. If you ask them to shoot 250 meters standing, you should be able to do it yourself. Thank you, and mabuhay, aloha.
Thank you, sir. General Gardner, sir.
And so as General Stuart, just as the last keynote speaker said, hey, it all starts with people. The most important thing that we ought to be investing in. And in this case, we're talking about reserve formation. So as an active duty soldier, it is about investing in our reserve formations so that they're ready. When we make them ready, get them confident, build their trust, then you can get after the partnership piece, which is foundational to everything we do here in this theater. It is foundational for us to rehearse together. We're not going to do anything alone on an active side, so we're certainly going to be multi-compo. We're going to be one Army, but we need to be an Army that is partnered with allies and partners. And then once you achieve that, and we do this every day out in this theater, then you can prevail. We're ready for any fight, whether it's humanitarian assistance or something else than that. Start with your people, get after the partnerships that allows you to prevail. That's what we need to do.
Thank you, sir.
Hey, we've had a lot of great reflections from history over the last couple of days. You know, Dr. McManus, and I think many of our keynotes have reflected on the lessons of World War II. And I just share that, you know, 1942, when the might of Imperial Japan was powering its way down through the Pacific and had invaded New Guinea, which was then Australian territory, Australia was out of position. Our regular divisions were all in North Africa doing great work, but quickly trying to get back into position. So the Australian troops that stopped the might of Imperial Japan on the Kokoda track and helped turn the tide of the war in that part of the theatre were our reservists. Everywhere I go around this theatre, I see all compos doing God's good work. State partnership programs covering blind spots that we just simply don't have the mass to achieve elsewhere. We do truly need to just, we all got the one jersey. Give everyone a number and make sure that we get our arms around and value every single member that's prepared to put their hand up and serve, because the big theatre, we need them all. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. General Stardy.
Thanks. The Army Reserve will continue to maintain a strong forward presence here in USRPAC and Indo-PACOM, actively participating in joint exercises. Look, in support of General Clark, it's just simple. Forward basing equipment is not a convenience, it's a necessity. It enables joint maneuver, operational reach, strategic tempo. It turns partnership into presence and presence into deterrence. And as we heard here, deterrence is our #1 duty. Thank you for having me, and sir, thanks again.
We'd like to express our sincere appreciation to AUSA, our sponsors, our panelists, audience. It's been a true pleasure. Mahalo, one team, we will defend.
Well, thanks to a great panel. If I could ask you to exit in that direction, that would be fantastic. Well done. Well, ladies and gentlemen, in keeping with the fine LANPAC tradition, don't leave yet, you're going to want to see this. We, every year over the past couple years, have presented a local junior ROTC writing award. And we're really happy to have Colonel Retired Arthur Tulak. He is our AUSA Hawaii chapter's chairman for ROTC and JROTC awards. I'm going to ask him to join me on this stage along with General Brown to give out this prestigious award to this outstanding cadet. Art.
Good morning. The Hawaii AUSA chapter is partnered with veterans and military professional organizations, Military Order of Foreign Wars, and the Reserve Organization of America to sponsor the annual 50th Vietnam War Commemoration Cadet Essay Contest, which is now in its final 11th year as the commemoration draws to a close. This statewide essay contest provides junior ROTC and Civil Air Patrol cadets the opportunity to learn more about the Vietnam War, the men and women who served in that war. The purpose of the essays is to challenge the cadets to appreciate and learn about the sacrifices made by Vietnam veterans who served their country in an unpopular war and learn lessons about citizenship, loyalty to country, commitment and duty and service, and in some cases to write about their Vietnam War ancestor, often a grandfather. The winners of the contest receive a certificate and prize checks. The Hawaii AUSA chapter provides funds for this program, and our first place winner is Cadet Jeff Pitatawachai and his family from the Henry J. Kaiser High School Junior ROTC. The cadet's essay was titled, Remembering Everyone Deployed, and Cadet Pitatawachai is joined by his parents Tatawat and Jung Yong Choi, as well as his senior aerospace instructor, Colonel retired Tim Martinez.
Go get in there. Yeah. How about another round? Yeah, absolutely. We're gonna now take a 20-minute break. We'll return, well, a little more than 20 minutes. We're gonna return here at 11 o'clock to hear from our final keynote speaker, General Xavier T. Brunson, Commander, United Nations Command, Combined Forces Command, and United States Forces, Korea.